Your Honor, I need you to read Section 47.3 of the marriage contract very carefully. The words came out steady, but my heart was hammering so hard I thought the entire courtroom could hear it. Eugene sat at his lawyer's table, that smug smile still plastered on his face like he'd already won. His mistress Crystal was right beside him, her manicured hand resting on his arm like she owned him. Like she owned everything that used to be mine. But what they didn't know was that 15 years ago, when I was young and stupid and so in love I couldn't see straight, I'd buried something in those marriage documents. Something Eugene had signed without reading. Something that was about to change everything. You know what they say about karma? Sometimes it takes its sweet time, but when it comes for you, it comes hard. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person you underestimate the most is the one who's been 3 steps ahead of you the entire time. Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I hope you're somewhere comfortable, because this story is going to take you on a ride. Whether you're listening at home in your car or taking a walk, I need you to buckle up. The weather might be changing outside, but nothing's going to compare to the storm that's about to hit Eugene Hayes. My name is Clara Hayes. Well, it used to be Hayes. Now I'm back to being Clara Washington, and let me tell you, that name has never felt more powerful. This is the story of how I went from being the abandoned wife everyone pitied, standing outside my own home with 3 crying daughters and a single suitcase, to becoming the woman who brought down a real estate empire with nothing but the truth and a contract clause that everyone forgot existed. But let me start from the beginning because the best revenge stories always start with the biggest mistakes. I was 22 when I met Eugene. Fresh out of business school, working as a junior analyst at some tiny firm downtown, living in a studio apartment with a roommate who never cleaned and a refrigerator that made more noise than a construction site. I had dreams bigger than my bank account and enough determination to power half the city. Eugene walked into my office building one Tuesday morning, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He was 28, confident in that way that comes from never having to worry about money, and when he smiled at me in the elevator, I felt like the center of the universe. I believed in love at first sight back then. I believed in soulmates and forever and all those fairy tale ideas that make you do stupid things like trust someone completely. I believed that when 2 people loved each other, they shared everything. Their dreams, their struggles, their victories. I believed marriage was a partnership where both people lifted each other up. Most of all, I believed that Eugene Hayes was different from all the other rich guys I'd met. I thought he saw something special in me, beyond just a pretty face. I thought he respected my mind, my ambition, my ideas about business and real estate development. If you've ever liked this video, if you've ever shared a story that moved you, I need you to do that again right now. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story. It's the story of every woman who's ever been underestimated, every wife who's been taken for granted, every mother who's had to fight for what's rightfully hers. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this is about to get intense. But let me start from the beginning. From that moment when I was young enough to think love conquered everything. Eugene swept me off my feet in ways I didn't even know I wanted. Expensive dinners, weekend trips to places I'd only seen in magazines, jewelry that made my friends gasp when they saw it. But more than that, he listened to me. When I talked about my ideas for developing affordable housing in underserved communities, he nodded and asked questions. When I showed him my business plans, he called me brilliant. 6 months after we met, he proposed. A year later, we were married in a ceremony that felt like something out of a movie. And 2 years after that, when I was 25 and pregnant with triplets, he asked me to help him start his own real estate company. I need someone I can trust, he said, holding my hand while I sat in the doctor's office, still stunned from the ultrasound news. Someone who understands business like you do. I want us to build something together, Clara. Something for our family. I said yes, without hesitation. I took my savings, my connections, my business degree, and my dreams, and I poured them all into Hayes Development Group. I wrote the business plan. I secured the initial funding. I drafted every contract, every partnership agreement, every piece of paperwork that would eventually turn a small real estate firm into a multi-million-dollar empire, including our marriage contract. I remember sitting at the kitchen table at 3 in the morning, 8 months pregnant and exhausted, typing up page after page of legal documents while Eugene slept upstairs. My back ached, my feet were swollen, and I could barely see the computer screen, but I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted our business protected. I wanted our family protected. I wanted our marriage protected. So I added what I called the cheating clause buried deep in Section 47.3 of our marriage contract. It was simple. If either spouse was unfaithful during the marriage, all joint assets including business shares and properties would transfer entirely to the faithful spouse. I figured it was like insurance. Something we'd never need, but better to have it just in case. Eugene signed every document I put in front of him without reading them. He trusted me completely, he said. His brilliant wife who could handle all the boring legal stuff while he focused on the big picture. What I didn't know was that his trust had an expiration date. The triplets were born on a Thursday. Emma, Grace, and Sophia. 3 perfect little girls who turned our world upside down in the most beautiful way possible. Eugene was a devoted father those first few years. He'd come home from work and spend hours playing with them, reading bedtime stories, teaching them to ride bikes in our enormous backyard. Hayes' development group exploded during those early years. Every project I planned, every deal I structured, every partnership I negotiated brought in millions. We bought the mansion in Westchester. We hired housekeepers and nannies and gardeners. We joined country clubs and charity boards and became the kind of power couple that other people envied. But success has a way of changing people. The bigger the company got, the busier Eugene became. The more money we made, the more time he spent traveling. The more successful we appeared on the outside, the more distant he became at home. By the time the girls turned 10, Eugene was spending more nights in hotel rooms than in our bed. Business trips, he said.
Investor meetings.
Deal negotiations that couldn't wait. I managed the company from home, raising 3 daughters and running a multi-million-dollar business from my kitchen table while Eugene played the public face of Hayes' development group. He gave the interviews, attended the galas, posed for the magazine covers. But I was the one reading financial reports at midnight, the one solving problems that could make or break us, the one keeping everything together while he collected the credit. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once the girls were older, once the business was more stable, once we got through whatever phase this was, Eugene would come back to us. Back to me. I was still believing in fairy tales at 37 years old. The morning everything changed started like any other morning. The girls were getting ready for school, arguing over who got the last of the good cereal. I was reviewing contracts for a new development project while trying to braid Sophia's hair and pack lunchboxes. Eugene had been in Miami for 3 days on what he called a major deal negotiation. That's when I heard the car in the driveway. Not Eugene's car. I knew the sound of his engine. This was something else. Something expensive and unfamiliar. I looked out the kitchen window and saw a black Mercedes pulling up to our front door. A woman got out. Young, maybe 25, blonde hair that looked like she'd just stepped out of a salon, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She had keys. She walked up to my front door like she owned the place, slid a key into the lock, and let herself into my house. That's when Eugene walked in behind her, carrying suitcases. "Mommy, who is that lady?" Emma asked, looking out the window. I couldn't answer her. I couldn't move. I just stood there watching my husband of 15 years escort a stranger into our home, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Clara," Eugene said when he found me in the kitchen. His voice was different. Cold. Like he was talking to a business associate he didn't particularly like. "We need to talk." The woman's name was Crystal Anderson, 26 years old, originally from Colombia, and, according to Eugene, his new wife. "Your new what?" I said, still holding Sophia's half-braided hair in my hands. The girls were staring at us with those wide, confused eyes that children get when their world suddenly doesn't make sense anymore. "Girls, go upstairs and finish getting ready for school," Eugene said without looking at them. "Mommy and I need to discuss some grown-up things." They didn't move. Emma, always the protective one, stepped closer to me. "Mom, what's happening?" "It's okay, baby," I managed to say, though nothing about this was okay.
Go upstairs like Daddy said.
"I'll be up in a minute to finish your hair, Sophia." After they reluctantly left, Eugene sat down at our kitchen table like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't just brought another woman into our home and called her his wife. "Clara, I know this is sudden, but I need you to understand that this isn't personal." "Not personal." 15 years of marriage, 3 children, and a business empire we'd built together, and it wasn't personal. "Eugene, I don't understand what's happening right now. Who is that woman, and why does she have keys to our house?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a marriage certificate. Dated 6 months ago. In Cartagena, Colombia. "You married someone else while you were married to me?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. "Clara, be reasonable. You know our marriage has been over for years. We're more like business partners than husband and wife. I thought you understood that." Business partners. That's what 15 years had been reduced to in his mind. All those nights I'd stayed up working on contracts while he traveled. All those school plays and soccer games I'd attended alone while he was building our future. All those times I'd pushed down my own exhaustion and loneliness because I thought we were working toward something together. Business partners. "Where are the divorce papers?" I asked because suddenly I understood that this conversation wasn't happening by accident. This was planned. Calculated. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "My lawyer drew them up. It's all very straightforward. You'll get alimony, of course. And child support." "I'm not unreasonable, Clara." I opened the envelope with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The papers were thick, official, and already signed by Eugene. All they needed was my signature to make his bigamy legal through divorce. The settlement terms made my stomach drop. I would get the house in Westchester. A monthly alimony payment that sounded generous until you realized it was barely enough to maintain the property taxes on the house. Child support that would cover basic expenses, but nothing close to the lifestyle our daughters had always known. Hayes Development Group, the company I'd built from nothing, would remain entirely in Eugene's name. "Eugene, I started this company. I wrote every business plan, secured every major contract, designed every project that made us successful. Hayes Development exists because of my work. And you'll always be credited for your contributions, Clara. But legally, the business assets are in my name. You chose to focus on the family while I handled the business side. That was your decision." My decision. Like the hundreds of nights I'd spent working on Hayes development projects while he was out of town weren't contributions to the business. Like the fact that I'd used my own savings to fund our startup costs didn't matter. Like the investor connections I'd cultivated and the deals I'd structured were just helpful suggestions rather than the foundation of our success. What about the girls? They live here. This is their home. Crystal and I will be living here now. The girls are welcome to visit on weekends, but their primary residence will be with you. I'm sure you understand that this transition needs to be handled delicately. Crystal walked into the kitchen then, moving around our space like she'd been there for years instead of minutes. She opened our refrigerator and pulled out orange juice, pouring herself a glass like she owned the place. Because apparently she did now. "Eugene told me so much about you," she said with a smile that was probably supposed to be friendly. "You seem like such a dedicated mother. The girls are lucky to have someone who can focus entirely on them now." Focus entirely on them. Translation: now that you're not important to the business anymore, you can be a full-time single mother with no income except what Eugene decides to give you. "Crystal, could you give us a moment?" I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Oh, of course." I should probably start moving my things into the master bedroom anyway. She smiled at Eugene like they shared some private joke, then walked upstairs toward the bedroom where I'd slept for 15 years. Eugene, you can't be serious about this. You can't just decide our marriage is over and expect me to disappear quietly. We have children together. We have a life together. We have an arrangement, Clara. We always have. You managed the household and helped with the business paperwork, and I handled everything else. Now that arrangement is changing. Helped with the business paperwork. That's what he was calling 15 years of building Hayes Development Group from the ground up. I want to see a lawyer, I said. That's your right, of course. But Clara, I think you should consider what's best for the girls. A long, messy divorce won't help anyone. This way, we can make the transition as smooth as possible for them. Smooth for them, or smooth for him. The girls came downstairs then, backpacks ready for school, looking between Eugene and me with worried faces. Daddy, are you staying home today? Grace asked.
No, sweetheart.
Daddy has some business to take care of. But I'll see you this weekend, okay? What about tonight? Are you coming to my soccer game? Sophia asked. Eugene looked uncomfortable. We'll see, honey. Daddy's schedule is very busy right now. That's when I realized that this wasn't just about ending our marriage. This was about ending his relationship with our daughters, too. He was starting over with Crystal, and we were just the old life he was leaving behind. After I dropped the girls at school, I drove straight to the office of Patricia Reynolds, the best divorce attorney in Westchester County. I'd met her at various charity events over the years, and she had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. Clara, I have to be honest with you, Patricia said after reviewing the divorce papers Eugene had presented. This is not a generous settlement. Given the assets involved and your contributions to building the business, you should be entitled to much more. Eugene says the business is entirely in his name. That may be true legally, but we can argue that you were essentially an unpaid employee who contributed significantly to the company's success. We can fight for a portion of the business assets. How long would that take? In a case like this? Potentially years.
And it would be expensive.
Eugene has resources to hire the best lawyers and drag this out as long as possible.
Years.
While my daughters wondered why their family was falling apart. While I tried to survive on minimal alimony and child support. While Eugene and Crystal lived in my house and spent the money I'd helped earn. There's something else, Patricia said gently. I ran a basic background check on Eugene, just standard procedure. Clara, did you know he's been married before? Before me? No, he told me I was his first wife. Not before you. During your marriage. He's been married to Crystal Anderson for 6 months, but there's also a marriage certificate from 3 years ago to someone named Isabella Santos in Costa Rica. And another one from 5 years ago to Maria Gonzalez in Panama. The room started spinning. Are you saying Eugene is married to multiple women? I'm saying your husband appears to have a pattern of marrying women while already married. Which means he's committed multiple felonies. Which also means that his marriage to Crystal might not even be legal, depending on the jurisdiction. Multiple wives. Multiple marriages. While I was home raising our children and building our business, Eugene was traveling the world collecting wives like souvenirs. Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If Eugene has been committing bigamy, and if I can prove my contributions to Hayes Development Group, what are my chances of getting a fair settlement? She was quiet for a long moment. Clara, if we can prove what I think we can prove, you might not need a settlement at all. You might be entitled to everything. That afternoon, I went home to find Crystal rearranging the living room furniture. She'd moved family photos of me and the girls into a box and replaced them with pictures of her and Eugene from various tropical locations. I hope you don't mind, she said when she saw me staring. Eugene thought it would be better for everyone if we made the space feel more neutral. Neutral? This was my house. These were my things. This was the life I'd built. Actually, I do mind, I said, putting our family photos back where they belonged. This is still my home until the divorce is finalized. And these are pictures of my children in their own house. Crystal's friendly mask slipped for just a second. Eugene said you'd be moving out this week. Eugene said a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. That evening, when Eugene came home from whatever business meeting he'd used as an excuse to avoid dealing with the aftermath of his announcement, I was waiting for him in his office. "We need to talk," I said. "Clara, I thought we'd covered everything this morning." "Did we?" "Because I had a very interesting conversation with the lawyer today." "Did you know bigamy is a felony, Eugene?" His face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about."
Isabela Santos.
Maria Gonzalez. Should I keep going? For the first time since this whole nightmare started, Eugene looked genuinely scared. "Clara, those were business arrangements. Nothing more." Business arrangements that involved marriage licenses? You don't understand the complexities of international business development. Sometimes certain legal arrangements are necessary to secure contracts in specific countries. Legal arrangements. He was calling his other wives legal arrangements. "Eugene, I want you and Crystal out of this house by tomorrow night." "That's not how this works, Clara. I own this house." "Actually, you don't. We own this house. Until we're divorced, I have every right to be here. And I'm asking you to leave. And if I refuse, then I'll call the police and report that you've brought your illegal wife into our marital home. I'll also call the state attorney's office and report your bigamy charges. I'm sure the newspapers would love to write about the real estate mogul who collects wives like business cards." Eugene stared at me for a long moment. This was the first time I'd stood up to him in years, and I could see him trying to figure out his next move. "Fine," he said finally. "Crystal and I will stay at the hotel tonight. But Clara, you're making a mistake. You're turning this into a war you can't win." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm not the one who committed multiple felonies." After he left, I sat in our empty house and cried for the first time since this morning. Not because I was losing Eugene. I'd lost him years ago, without even realizing it. I cried because I was angry. Angry at myself for being so naive. Angry at him for wasting 15 years of my life. Angry that my daughters would grow up thinking this was what marriage looked like. But mostly, I cried because I finally understood what I was really fighting for. Not just money or property, or even justice. I was fighting to show my daughters that women don't disappear quietly when men decide they're disposable. And that fight was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Eugene's key in the front door. For a split second, I thought maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he'd realized what he was throwing away and wanted to fix this. Then I heard Crystal's voice echoing through the hallway. "The movers should be here within the hour," she was saying. "Make sure they're careful with the artwork in the dining room. Some of those pieces are worth more than most people's cars." I walked downstairs to find them directing a team of men who were wrapping our furniture in moving blankets. Our dining room table, where the girls had done homework for years. The couch where we'd watched family movies on Sunday nights. The piano where Grace had practiced for her recitals. "What is this?" I asked Eugene. "I told you yesterday that Crystal and I would be staying elsewhere. We're moving into the penthouse downtown. We'll need some of the furniture." "You can't just take our things, Eugene. They're my things, Clara. I paid for them. With money we earned together." Crystal appeared from the kitchen, carrying a box of items I recognized. My grandmother's china. The silver candlesticks that had been a wedding gift from my parents. Photo albums filled with pictures of the girls as babies. "Excuse me, those are family heirlooms," I said, taking the box from her hands. "Eugene said they were wedding gifts," she replied with that same fake smile. "Since you're getting divorced, he thought I should have them for our home." Our home. She'd been in my life for exactly 24 hours and was already erasing me from it. "Eugene, you cannot give my grandmother's china to your girlfriend." "Wife, Crystal corrected. And these items were gifts to both of you during your marriage, which makes them marital property subject to division. She talked like she'd rehearsed this conversation. Like she'd been planning this moment for months. How long have you known about me? I asked her directly. What do you mean? How long have you known that Eugene was married with 3 children when you started your relationship with him? Crystal glanced at Eugene, and something passed between them. Some look that told me everything I needed to know. Crystal knew our marriage was essentially over, Eugene said. I've been honest with her about our situation from the beginning. So you've been planning this for months, maybe years. Clara, you're being dramatic. Crystal and I fell in love. These things happen. I'm trying to handle this situation as considerately as possible.
Considerately.
He was stealing my furniture and my family heirlooms and calling it considerate. That's when my phone rang. Patricia Reynolds. Clara, I need you to come to my office immediately. And bring any financial documents you have access to. Bank statements, business records, anything. What's wrong? I'll explain when you get here. But Clara, don't sign anything Eugene gives you. Not until we talk. I hung up and looked at Eugene, who was clearly trying to listen to my conversation. I have to go, I said. Clara, before you leave, there's something else we need to discuss. He pulled out another set of papers. I've been thinking about the custody arrangement. What about it? Crystal, and I think it would be better if the girls lived with us full-time. You'll have visitation rights, of course, but given your current emotional state and financial situation, we feel they'd be more stable in our home. My current emotional state. I was being punished for being upset that my husband had committed bigamy and was stealing my life. Eugene, you are not taking my children. I'm not taking them, Clara. I'm providing them with a stable home environment with 2 parents who can support them financially and emotionally. 2 parents. Crystal had known my daughters for 1 day, and Eugene wanted to make her their primary caregiver. You're out of your mind if you think I'm signing custody over to you and your mistress. Wife, Crystal said again. And we're not trying to replace you, Clara. We just want what's best for the girls. What's best for the girls? Like ripping them away from their mother, and the only home they'd ever known was somehow in their best interest. Mom, what's happening? I turned to see Emma standing in the doorway, still in her pajamas. She'd obviously heard raised voices and come downstairs to investigate. Why are these men taking our furniture? She asked, watching the movers carry our coffee table toward the door. It's just a temporary arrangement, sweetheart, Eugene said. Daddy and Clara are working out some grown-up things. But where are we going to sit? Where are we going to eat dinner? I knelt down next to Emma and took her hands. Baby, we're going to figure this out, okay? Nothing is going to change for you and your sisters. But Daddy's moving out and taking our stuff. Eugene looked genuinely uncomfortable for the first time. Like, he hadn't considered that his daughters might have opinions about watching their home get dismantled. Girls, why don't you go get dressed? I said. I need to run an errand, and then we'll talk about everything. After Emma went upstairs, I turned back to Eugene. You have until tonight to get your things out of this house. But the furniture stays. The family heirlooms stay. And if you try to file for custody of my daughters, I will make your life a living hell. Clara, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. I drove to Patricia's office with my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. When I walked into her conference room, she had papers spread across the entire table and a grim expression on her face. Clara, sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear. More difficult than finding out my husband is a bigamist? Eugene has been planning this divorce for at least 2 years. I found evidence that he's been moving assets out of joint accounts and into offshore holdings that are only in his name. She showed me bank statements that made my stomach drop. Accounts I'd never seen before. Transfers of millions of dollars to companies I'd never heard of. He's been systematically hiding money? Not just hiding it, stealing it. Clara, some of these transfers came directly from Hayes Development Group accounts. Money that should have been reinvested in the business or distributed as profits has been moved to personal accounts that only Eugene controls.